Hello and welcome back to Cock News, folks. Today we're diving into the spiciest, most drama-filled, reality show-worthy territorial dispute in the world, the South China Sea. This isn't just about some remote islands or empty ocean. This region is central to global trade, rich in resources, and at the heart of some serious power struggles. So what's really going on here? Let's break it down. The Spratly Islands, located in the South China Sea, are a disputed archipelago comprising islands, islets, cays, and over 100 reefs. Spread across a vast area of more than 425,000 square kilometers, they contain less than 2 square kilometers of naturally occurring land. These islands are situated off the coasts of the Philippines, Brunei, Malaysia, and Vietnam, and were named after British whaling captain Richard Spratly, who sighted Spratly Island in 1843. Historically, in 1939, the islands were largely uninhabited except by seabirds. The number and classification of the islands vary. While Chinese sources from 1986 list 14 islands or islets, they also mention a complex collection of submerged reefs, banks, and shoals. Now, why does everyone want a piece of this sea? For starters, the oil and gas. Estimates suggest there could be billions of barrels of oil and trillions of cubic feet of natural gas sitting beneath these waters. While it's not exactly the Middle East, it's enough to matter, especially for countries with growing energy needs. Then there's the fishing industry. This sea is one of the most heavily fished areas on the planet, and for many of the surrounding nations, it's a crucial food source and economic driver. Access to these fishing grounds means survival for millions of people and a big boost to national economies. But perhaps the biggest reason everyone's watching this region is its location. The South China Sea is like the superhighway of global trade. Over $3 trillion worth of goods pass through here every year. It's a crucial link between Asia, Europe, and the Middle East, meaning that any instability in this area could ripple across the world's economy. Now imagine this. Vietnam, Malaysia, Brunei, and the Philippines all roll up to the same party, claiming their little corner of the South China Sea like good neighbors. Everything's chill, right? But then, guess who shows up completely uninvited? Yup, China and his little bro, Taiwan. China strolls in all confident like,
"Hey guys, so I'm just gonna go ahead and take 90% of this ocean. It's called the 9-dash line. Ever heard of it? No? Well, whatever, I'm in charge now."
And the others are standing there like, Yo, what the hell? But things didn't end there. China wasn't satisfied with just drawing a line. They went full-on Minecraft mode and built their own islands. Yep, they've been creating artificial islands and turning them into military outposts, complete with airstrips and naval facilities. Why? Because whoever controls these islands can extend their exclusive economic zone, meaning they get first dibs on those resources and can project military power across the region. Meanwhile, the US is like that one neighbor who keeps showing up uninvited, reminding everyone,
"Hey, this is international waters, right? I'm just gonna park my aircraft carrier here and do some freedom of navigation exercises."
Challenging China's claims by showing they don't recognize these waters as Chinese territory. And let's not forget our other contestants, Japan and India. They're not even directly in the fight, but they've joined the party to check on things, aka keep an eye on China. Japan's all like,
"Well, 70% of our energy imports pass through here, so we're just gonna hang out with our buddy, the US, okay?"
And India's here to remind China,
"Hey, remember that border dispute we've had going on since like forever? Yeah, we're here too."
So what's the end game here? China wants control, not just over the resources, but over the sea itself. They're aiming to become the dominant force in the region, using their military and economic might to back up their claims. But the US isn't going to let that happen without a fight. For America, maintaining free navigation through these waters is part of keeping the global order they've led for decades. Here's a brief overview of the disputes surrounding these islands. Now, let's take a look at some key events that have taken place here. I'm only going to highlight a few important incidents, because if I tried to cover everything, this video would probably end up being over 3 hours long. In January 1988, China sent a group of ships to the southern part of the South China Sea near the Spratly Islands, which began provoking Vietnamese ships around Tizard Bank and the London Reefs. Vietnam believed this was a move to justify occupying the islands. In response, Vietnam sent 2 naval transport ships with soldiers to Johnson South Reef, Collins Reef, and Lansdowne Reef. In March 14, 1988, as Vietnamese soldiers unloaded supplies at Johnson South Reef, Chinese ships arrived and a confrontation occurred. Chinese frigates opened fire, sinking 2 Vietnamese ships. The Vietnamese soldiers, mostly unarmed, formed a circle to protect their flag, resisting the Chinese attack. Despite heavy losses, with 64 Vietnamese soldiers killed, the Chinese ultimately occupied the reef. Vietnam accused China of refusing to allow rescue operations for the dead and wounded. In May 2011, things in the South China Sea got a little too spicy when Chinese patrol boats decided to crash the party and mess with 2 Vietnamese oil exploration ships near the Spratly Islands. And like that wasn't enough, Chinese naval vessels showed up near East London Reef and started firing on Vietnamese fishing boats. The 3 Chinese ships, numbered 989, 27, and 28, rolled in. Then just for kicks, they fired on yet another Vietnamese fishing boat near Fiery Cross Reef. Clearly, somebody had too much energy that day. The chief commander of border guards in Phu Yen province was not having it, reporting that 4 Vietnamese vessels had been fired upon. Cue the protests. People in Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh City hit the streets, and even Vietnamese communities abroad, like in California and Paris, joined in, waving flags and chanting, "Hey, China, that's not cool." In January 2013, the Philippines decided to take things to the next level and initiated arbitration proceedings against China under the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, challenging China's claims over parts or all of the Spratly Islands within that infamous 9-dash line. A tribunal of arbitrators was formed, and the Permanent Court of Arbitration was brought in to oversee the proceedings. Fast forward to July 12, 2016, and the tribunal ruled in favor of the Philippines on most of their complaints. While the tribunal didn't touch on who actually owns the land or set maritime boundaries, it came down hard on China's historic rights claims, saying,
Sorry, but no, you don't get to claim all that water just because you drew some dashes on a map.
Here's the updated map showing which country claims these disputed areas. First, the red dots represent China's territory. The yellow dots show Malaysia's claims. Pink represents Brunei, purple marks Taiwan's, and green shows the Philippines' territory. Finally, Vietnam holds the most area, marked by blue dots. It looks like everything should be wrapping up with a happy ending, right? Well, it should be, but on August 19, 2024, Philippine Coast Guard vessels BRP Cape Engano and BRP Bagakay were damaged after being rammed by Chinese Coast Guard ships near Sabina Shoal. Meanwhile, a 60 Minutes crew, including journalist Cecilia Vega, was on board the Cape Engano when it was surrounded by 14 Chinese Coast Guard and maritime militia ships and rammed at 4 a.m. by a Chinese Coast Guard vessel. The collision tore a 3.5-foot hole above the waterline on the Cape Engano. The day after the clash, the Philippine government announced it was thinking about expanding an agreement they had with China to calm things down in the area near the Second Thomas Shoal and maybe use it in other disputed zones as well. Basically, they wanted to make sure everyone would try to avoid any more run-ins. But just a few days later, on August 25th, things got tense again. The Philippine vessel BRP Datu Sande, which usually helps out by delivering supplies to fishing crews, was surrounded by at least 8 Chinese ships. These included a Chinese Navy ship, a few Coast Guard cutters, and even 2 tugboats. The Philippines said the Datu Sande was on a humanitarian mission, but the situation went south when it was sprayed with water cannons by the Chinese ships and ended up being rammed, causing its engine to fail. China's Coast Guard spokesperson, Gan Yu, turned the tables, accusing the Philippine ship of purposely crashing into one of their ships. However, the Philippine Coast Guard later released a video that showed what really happened. It was actually the Chinese Coast Guard vessel 21555 that rammed into the Datu Sande, so the video basically called out China's version of events as a bit of a stretch. On August 31st, 2024, Philippine Coast Guard Commodore J. Tariela reported that a Chinese Coast Guard ship, 5205, rammed the PCG patrol ship BRP Teresa Magbanua 3 times. First, it hit the front left side of the Philippine ship, then swung around to strike the back right side, and finally came back for another hit on the front left. Tariela shared video footage showing the damage, which included a large hole, dents, bent railings, and waterlogged equipment.
Hawak. Sira ang plan nila. Ang camera.
China, however, claimed they were enforcing their laws around what they call China's Yanbin Reef and accused the Philippine ship of purposely colliding with their vessel. Despite China's claims, the video showed that the Philippine ship had clearly taken serious damage. Countries like the United States, Japan, Taiwan, Australia, and the European Union quickly condemned China's actions and called for China to stop attacking the Philippine ship. Then on September 15th, the Teresa Magbanua finally returned to the Philippines with 4 soldiers on board who were dehydrated due to China's attempts to block the ship. China warned that if the Teresa Magbanua returned to Sabina Shoal, they might try to tow it away, though this could be difficult due to the ship's large size. There's also a risk that this could drag the US into the conflict, making the situation even more tense. We'll definitely have to keep an eye on this situation. If China keeps acting like the big bully on the block, things are only going to escalate even further. And that's the latest on the South China Sea situation at the Spratly Islands. This is Rooster and Cock News team signing off. Thanks for tuning in, and goodbye.